They finally did it. The Indiana Fever just banned the journalists who have been trying to destroy Caitlin Clark for months, and what happens next is going to change women's basketball forever. What you're about to watch isn't a basketball story. It's the slow-motion collapse of any pretense that Caitlin Clark gets to control her own narrative. She is being pulled in two completely opposite directions by two extremes, and both of them are demanding she speak up, and both of them are ready to destroy her the second she does. And now the Indiana Fever have made a decision that is going to define the rest of her rookie season. Stay with me because this story has more layers than almost anyone realizes. Look, if this video made you stop and actually think differently about what Caitlin Clark is going through, that means more to me than you probably realize. Making these breakdowns takes hours of digging through every angle of a story most channels won't even touch honestly. So if you're still here, if this actually meant something to you, do me one favor before you go. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for the next person scrolling through their feed who needs to see the full picture instead of just another hot take. This channel only grows because people like you decide it's worth sticking around for. So if you believe athletes deserve a fair shake in the media, if you're tired of the noise and you just want the truth laid out straight, subscribe to WNBA Analysis right now, turn on notifications, and let's keep having these conversations together. I'll see you in the next one. Let's establish the timeline here because context matters. 10 days ago in Seattle, a journalist showed up to the post-game press conference with one mission: not to ask about the game. Not to ask about basketball. They wanted Caitlin Clark to answer a political question. And here's the thing about that particular question. There was no right answer. No matter what she said, half the internet was going to crucify her for it. That's not journalism. That's a trap disguised as a microphone. That same journalist had previously described Clark's fan base as white teenage boys. Not exactly subtle about the agenda there. So when Clark gave the most diplomatic, middle-of-the-road, completely uncontroversial non-answer possible, you'd think that would be the end of it. You'd be wrong. Enter Sophie Cunningham. And I want to be very clear about something here. There is one person on this planet who does not want Caitlin Clark riding in to defend what Sophie Cunningham said, and that person is Sophie Cunningham herself. Even when head coach Cheryl Reeve tried to publicly back her up, lip readers watching the footage caught Sophie basically thanking Reeve for staying out of it. And now, journalists from the complete opposite end of the political spectrum are doing the exact same thing the Seattle reporter did. They're asking Clark essentially the same trap question, just wrapped in different language. And when she gives that same diplomatic non-answer, they turn around and attack her for not defending her teammate. Think about that logic for a second. She is being criticized for refusing to get dragged into somebody else's controversy. Here's what almost nobody is saying out loud. Sophie Cunningham doesn't want Caitlin Clark defending her. We know this because of the Cheryl Reeve moment. Sophie is a grown woman with her own opinions, and she is not asking anyone to fight her battles for her. By every account from people who have actually spent time around her, she is one of the most genuinely pleasant people in the entire league. Her opinions are her own. She doesn't hide them, and she has zero expectation that a teammate should have to defend them for her. That's called being an adult. But now the Indiana Fever have started denying press credentials to specific journalists. The same journalists who tried to ambush Clark in Seattle and are now trying to get into Fever games. And by every account they are being refused. The Fever knows exactly what they're doing. They pulled Clark from that Seattle post-game availability because they saw what was coming. They knew the question was loaded before it was even asked. And now they're taking it a step further by cutting off access entirely. And honestly, credit to the Fever here because there's something almost darkly funny about this whole situation. The same crowd that desperately wants Caitlin Clark to speak out on everything, when she finally does say something, it's never enough. She's never woke enough, never passionate enough, never committed enough to their particular cause. Meanwhile, the crowd that normally screams, "Shut up and dribble," at every other athlete suddenly gets furious when Clark refuses to speak, because they've convinced themselves she's secretly on their side and want her to validate their worldview. Let me be as clear as I possibly can. I don't know what Caitlin Clark's position is on any of these political topics. And I don't care. Neither should you. Here's the reality. Caitlin Clark is a basketball player. She's not a legislator. She can't pass laws. She can't implement policy. No matter what she says, no matter what any of us say, none of us have that power sitting in a press conference. Now, if you're one of those outlets that's essentially political media wearing a sports media costume, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. Your readers know what they're signing up for and they're there for a reason. That's your business model and nobody's stopping you from running it. But here's the line. When a player doesn't want to get pulled into that, they should be allowed to opt out. That applies to everything in life. If somebody wants to focus on one thing, if somebody doesn't want to be an activist, they don't have to be. And right now we are watching two extremes try to force a 22-year-old rookie into a role she never asked for. Here's the part that really gets me. Everyone already thinks they know where Caitlin Clark's politics lean. So why does it even matter? Why does her personal position on issues that have nothing to do with basketball matter more than her answer about a pick and roll? You know, things have gotten genuinely absurd when Dave Portnoy starts sounding like the most reasonable person in the room. Portnoy, a man who built an entire media empire on being provocative and controversial, is out here saying the most basic common sense thing imaginable. Just let her play basketball. We tuned in to watch her play basketball. Stop turning every press conference into a political interrogation. When Dave Portnoy is the voice of reason in your argument, it might be time to take a long look in the mirror and ask how far off the beaten path you've wandered. Now let's talk about Sophie Cunningham for a second, because she's become a lightning rod in all of this. People are writing genuinely unhinged things about her. Do I agree with any of that? No. Do I think Sophie actually cares? Also no. If Sophie Cunningham cared about unhinged commentary, about signs being held up at games, about people going after her online, she wouldn't be nearly as outspoken as she is. She knows exactly how her opinions are going to land with certain fans and she says them anyway. Here's what actually matters though. The specific topic Sophie has been vocal about is one that somewhere around 80 to 85% of the country agrees with her on. Globally, that number climbs even higher. This isn't some fringe take. If you ran an anonymous poll of WNBA players on this exact issue, I'd bet a strong majority would land right there with her. I don't think the friction some players may feel towards Sophie right now is really about this particular topic at all. If anything, that tension likely traces back to the Dijonai Carrington situation and how that played out with the league office. On this specific issue, Sophie is far from standing alone. And let's be honest about who Sophie Cunningham is, both as a player and a person. She's not going to change who she is for anybody. She is one of the most fun, most watchable players in the entire WNBA, not just for her own team's fans but period. There aren't many players in this league who bring that kind of night-to-night energy and entertainment value. You can disagree with her opinions all you want. You cannot honestly say she's boring to watch. So now we're left with this genuinely awkward situation. Caitlin Clark is stuck in the middle of a fight she never chose to be part of. It's awkward for her. It's awkward for Sophie. It's awkward for the whole locker room. And we need to be honest about what's actually happening here because it cuts both ways. People are latching onto Sophie Cunningham purely to use her as a weapon against the entire league. The same way certain corners of the internet tried to use Caitlin Clark as a cudgel to attack every other player in the WNBA. These are not two different phenomena. They're the same playbook wearing different jerseys. Use the athlete as a prop for your agenda, and when they refuse to cooperate, turn on them. Here's what happens next, and honestly you can already see it taking shape. The Indiana Fever have drawn a hard line. They are not going to let their franchise player get ambushed in a press conference again. Expect controlled access, vetted questions, and continued exclusion for anyone more interested in manufacturing a viral controversy than actually covering basketball. Is that the right call? Depends entirely on where you're standing. If you're a fan who just wants to watch basketball and hear about basketball, this is probably a relief. If you're a journalist who believes athletes carry a responsibility to use their platform for social causes, you're going to call this censorship, and you're going to call it a dangerous precedent. But think about this from Caitlin's actual perspective for a second. She's 22 years old. She is a rookie trying to navigate the single biggest media spotlight in the history of the WNBA. She has fans who worship her and fans who despise her, often for reasons that have nothing whatsoever to do with basketball. She's got teammates still figuring out how to play alongside her, and opponents with a decade of league experience treating her like a threat to be neutralized. And on top of all of that, she's got journalists from both political extremes trying to draft her as their spokesperson. That is not a fair position to put anyone in, let alone a rookie in her first professional season. The fact that she's handled it this well is honestly remarkable. Most people would have cracked already. Most would have either gone full activist in one direction, or shut down media access entirely. Instead, she's managed to stay right in the middle, giving deliberately boring, diplomatic answers and keeping the conversation on basketball. That takes real discipline. The easy move would be to pick a side, feed them exactly what they want to hear, and let half the internet love you while the other half tries to destroy you. The hard move, the one she's actually making, is refusing to play that game at all. The Fever's decision to pull credentials isn't about shielding Clark from tough questions. It's about shielding her from bad faith questions engineered to manufacture controversy instead of provide insight. There's a massive difference between a journalist asking a hard question about her performance, her role on the roster, or her adjustment to the pro game, and a journalist trying to bait her into a political flashpoint that has nothing to do with why anyone is actually in that room. One of those is journalism. The other is activism wearing a press badge. Does this set a precedent that could eventually be abused? Absolutely. Teams could use this exact justification to shut out any tough coverage and only grant access to friendly outlets who lob softballs and write puff pieces. That is a completely legitimate concern. But we're not there yet. Right now, we're talking about a team specifically targeting reporters who have already shown, on the record, that they're not there to cover basketball. And here's what makes all of this particularly unfair to Caitlin Clark. She never asked for any of it. She didn't campaign to become the face of a political movement. She didn't position herself as an activist. From day one, she's been remarkably consistent. She wants to play basketball, she wants to win games, and she wants to be judged on what happens between the lines. But apparently that's not enough for either extreme. One side needs her as their champion, proof their worldview is correct. The other side needs her as their villain, proof of everything wrong with the other side. Neither one is willing to just let her be a basketball player. Sophie Cunningham, on the other hand, has made total peace with being a lightning rod. She knows her opinions will generate strong reactions, and she's fine with that. She isn't asking anyone to defend her, she isn't expecting universal agreement, and she is not going to change who she is just because it makes people uncomfortable. That's her choice and she owns every bit of it. Caitlin hasn't made that same choice. She's actively trying to avoid that role entirely. And the fact that both political extremes keep trying to force her into it anyway says a lot about how broken this conversation has become. We can't even let someone opt out anymore. We can't accept that maybe, just maybe, a 22-year-old basketball player simply doesn't want to be turned into a political symbol. The next few weeks are going to be fascinating to watch. The Fever have made their position clear. Certain journalists are no longer welcome. That's going to create backlash. Expect a wave of think pieces about press freedom, athlete responsibility, and the dangers of controlled media access. Some of those pieces will make genuinely valid points. Others will be written by the exact same reporters who created this mess in the first place, suddenly discovering strong opinions about journalism ethics the moment their own access gets cut off. And through all of it, Clark is going to keep showing up. She's going to keep playing basketball, and she's going to keep giving the same diplomatic non-answers that frustrate absolutely everyone in equal measure, because that's the only winning move available in a game where both sides have already rigged the rules against her. So where does this actually end? Honestly, I don't know. The forces pulling at Caitlin Clark from both directions aren't going anywhere. The political outlets dressed up as sports media aren't suddenly going to start asking about pick-and-roll defense. The fans who've decided she represents their tribe aren't going to stop demanding she speak up on their behalf. And the Fever can only control so much. They can restrict credentials for home games, but they can't control the road. They can't control social media. They can't control the broader narrative machine. What I do know is this: it is completely, unquestionably unfair to Caitlin Clark. It's unfair that she has to navigate a minefield no rookie in this league's history has ever faced. It's unfair that every single word she says gets dissected for hidden political subtext. It's unfair that staying neutral somehow manages to make both sides furious at the same time. And it's unfair that the conversation around her has gotten so toxic that her own franchise felt it had to restrict media access just to protect her from gotcha questions. None of this is right. None of this is how it's supposed to work. And yet here we are, watching it unfold in real time, knowing full well it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, because we've built a media environment where everything is political, everyone has to pick a side, and opting out is treated as the one unforgivable choice. The real question isn't whether Caitlin Clark will eventually be forced into taking a public stance on these issues. The real question is how long she can hold the line before the pressure becomes unbearable, and whether, when that moment finally comes, she resents every single person who pushed her toward it. My guess? She already does. Look, if this video made you stop and actually think differently about what Caitlin Clark is going through, that means more to me than you probably realize. Making these breakdowns takes hours of digging through every angle of a story most channels won't even touch honestly. So if you're still here, if this actually meant something to you, do me one favor before you go. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for the next person scrolling through their feed who needs to see the full picture instead of just another hot take. This channel only grows because people like you decide it's worth sticking around for. So if you believe athletes deserve a fair shake in the media, if you're tired of the noise and you just want the truth laid out straight, Subscribe to WNBA Analysis right now, turn on notifications, and let's keep having these conversations together. I'll see you in the next one.